Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Salim bin Muhammad Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel Zamir Universal. I just want to really address my religious Jewish friends, brothers, and real worshipping, believing Jews, followers of Prophet Moses, Abraham, David, Solomon, and these are the people I am addressing. I am not addressing mentally deranged, crazy, Zionist, the cruelest. I am not addressing like Netanyahu or Joe Biden who says I am a Zionist. The whole the barbarism, the despicable, most disgusting, most disgraceful characters are these people, and I am just going to show you the atrocities which they have been committing on the worshippers, committing on women and babies and children, and then have the guts to speak and talk nonsense about babies' heads being cut on that and any woman being raped. Every woman on that day, October the 7th, said that they were not touched even, let alone the rape. So it must be Netanyahu who was raped and not any of their women. In Islam, and I'm sure the Palestinian, they have great respect for women, whether they are Jewish women, English woman, Christian woman, any woman. It is the Jews who have the Playboy clubs, it is the Jews who have the pornographic movie businesses, these people who are the one with the child abuse. Every evil in the world you will find behind there is a Zionist hiding and making money and sucking your blood like a vampire. I just with very short this introduction. So what you are seeing in Gaza, you must have been used to and seeing this thing for the last 75 years in the most sacred mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and look at the respect they have for the father of the prophets, Prophet Abraham. And because they are not religious, they are not Jews. They are just like property dealers, someone who want to make money, occupy your land, occupy your home, and just be rich, irrespective. So they have no religion. But unfortunately, all the abuse, all the hatred is directed towards the Jews. So I think it's the religious and Orthodox Jews whom I am addressing should hold them from their collar and strangulate them. At home, politically, culturally, socially, religiously, and that's the only way to get rid of this new breed of Zionists who think they are going to have any kingdom, and that king they want is a bigender. They must be crazy, they must be living in a fool's paradise, and they do not know that God created Adam, the first prophet on earth from whom we all descended. All human beings are vicegerents of, God sent them and are children of Adam. And now they talk nonsense and rubbish, non-scientific, then Adam was bigender. They have to be idiots. God created Adam from the clay, from earth, and that's when you are buried and you are going to be part of that clay, and on the day of judgment and resurrection, all God is going to say you to call you, and you just, all your DNA, all your little tiny particles which are not even visible, which are 1/100th of a nanoparticle, they will assemble together and form you in whatever form you died. Now they don't believe in this. They change all the divine revelations, Torah, and they now what they have with them is Talmud, which is nothing but the lectures of the rabbis for the thousands and thousands of years, because they can't get back the original Torah. But there are still people who want to get rid of them, whose heart cries with Muslims, with Gazans, with Palestinians, with the people who want to worship and look at their crimes. With these words, I just want to start showing you and giving you the evidence.
Well, to discuss everything that's going on in Gaza in a little bit more detail, we're joined on set by Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss. He's a spokesperson for the Orthodox Jewish anti-Zionist organisation, Neturei Karta. Thank you for joining us. I guess, first of all, I've got lots of questions, so if you could summarise for us your feelings on what's going on in Gaza at the moment.
Well, with the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and sanctifying His name and bringing peace to the world, inshallah. It's not my feelings, it's the feelings of Jews around the world who are true to our religion, Judaism, a religion of 3,000 years. We hurt, we cry, we suffer, we pain with the people of Gaza beyond words what's happening to them. There's no way of expressing it in our frustration, because to us it's a double nakba. It is being done in the name of my religion of 3,000 years by a movement that's 100-odd years, a political nationalist movement of non-religious Jews, Zionists, who are trying to transform my religion to nationalism and use the religion of subservience to God to cover for their creating a state, occupying another people, and by silencing anybody who dares to speak up as being anti-Semitic. This is abhorrent. It's totally not true. My religion is to serve God. My religion is not to kill or steal, not to occupy. And we're not even allowed to have a state since the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. And Jews held by this belief for 2,000 years strictly. And we lived with the Muslim people in peace for the 2,000 years. We lived in every Muslim and Arab country in peace and harmony. There's nothing to do with the religious conflict there.
I guess, Rabbi Weiss, given that then, what are your feelings on those in power in the state of Israel, in particular the right-wing factions there? What do you think of them? We
consider these sinners, criminals. They're using, again, maliciously, and some of them, because they've been conned into this belief, they're using the Jewish religion totally immorally, wrongly, because, again, Judaism is to keep the Torah, to serve God, as we did for hundreds of years. To occupy, to steal, to create a state is expressly forbidden according to my Torah. All the rabbis around the world for 130 years since Zionism started spoke up in every way, in every style that they had, and declared that Zionism is sinful, is a criminal, and is totally unacceptable according to my religion. This chief rabbi of Palestine in 1947, before they made the state, pleaded with the United Nations. His name was Rabbi Dushinsky. Now, when I say the chief rabbi, I mean nothing to do with the Zionists. Use the Star of David. They use the name Israel. They use all the trappings of my religion, and they made a rabbinate and chief rabbi. But we have a Jewish community with a rabbinate, Eda Charedis, God-fearing community, and the chief rabbi in 1947 was Rabbi Dushinsky, of blessed memory, and he pleaded with the United Nations, which is in their documents. He said, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." And since then, we've been demonstrating the tens and hundreds of thousands and being brutally beaten by the Zionists.
Given that, Rabbi Weiss, the US president isn't here today to say what he thought, but when Joe Biden said, "I'm a Zionist," what did you think of that? Well, how did that make you feel?
I've been living this bitter pill for my whole life. My father, of blessed memory, was a student, was a follower of one of the great rabbis in Europe who passed away before the Second World War, who fought tooth and nail this Zionist movement that started in Europe. And we know these are what the Zionists tell the world. Their narrative is that they're God's blessing to the world, the end of exile, what they call it, the beginning of redemption.
So he's misguided. The US president is misguided. He's listening to the wrong people.
100% either are the best. They're being misguided, and they mean well for the Jewish people. We're very thankful for the leaders of the world who want to help Jews. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father escaped the Nazis when they came to Hungary. But we appreciate people who want to do us good. But on the contrary, the support and the furtherance of the state of Israel is only causing, as you see, 75 years and more of bloodshed of the Palestinians. That's the mass slaughter that's happening now, and the Jews. 75 years of death and suffering. We live together, Jews and Muslims and Christians, together in Palestine and around the Muslim world in harmony. What changed? The only issue that changed is the introduction of this political Judaism, this ersatz Judaism called Zionism. They have created this quagmire. They are the ones who are the patrons, the ones who are the cause of endless rivers of blood of both Jews and Muslims and hate that's developed around the world. They are the personification of anti-Semitism that they are claiming and accusing others of.
Okay, well, I mean, they're not all here to defend themselves. You mentioned Auschwitz there. Something you've said in the past is that you said that Zionists use, and I quote you here, the Holocaust issue to their own benefit. 100%. Is that what you think is happening here in this war, in the defense of this war?
It's one link in a chain that they're using constantly since the creation of the state. They use the fact, the guilt of the world that was silenced when my grandparents and others were being murdered, and people feel guilty and they want to support Jewish people. But what has happening is, so ironically, is that it's not only a good for the Jewish people, it is the greatest cancer for Jewish people, because first of all, as you see, we've been estranged from our Muslim neighbors around the world. All the Jewish communities that were living in Iraq, in Tunisia, in Egypt, they're all gone. And where did they go to? They disappeared because of Zionism. And the ones who are living in the Holy Land, first of all, they totally misconstrue what it means to be a Jew. A Jew means to serve God, to keep the Sabbath, keep the Ten Commandments, keep the kosher, all the laws, while Israel proudly announces they're a democracy. You're free of keeping the laws of the Torah. So you see the duplicity, the hypocrisy, and what it means a Jewish is a religion. How could you throw away God's commandments and then claim that you're doing God's will? And what God's will is here when you're murdering in the tens of thousands of people here. We can't be silent on this, what's happening to the people of Gaza. And mind you, we really have to point out that when the Jews stood up, we're never militant. We never carry guns, our communities. We never carry knives. And boys and girls get arrested because we refuse to serve in the army. They get brutally beaten. This is already for 75 years. Children, old men, because simply we're standing out on the streets of Jerusalem and saying, this is unacceptable. The occupation is not Judaism. And they don't want to hear that. And they brutally, this is the army for Israel.
I can see
if this would happen here in Turkey or in the United States, they would be on the plane, Netanyahu, screaming anti-Semitism, yet they do this with impunity. How come?
I can understand the strength of your feeling. I suppose to move to a slightly more practical question then, you presumably then don't believe in a two-state solution.
No.
So what is the answer to this conflict? What do you see as being a good outcome from what's happening now?
Well, first of all, we have to be very clear. There is two distinct issues. For a doctor to prescribe a medicine, he has to diagnose the sickness. And if he falsely diagnoses the sickness, he can be sued for criminal negligence. The sickness here is not a difference of religion between Jews and Muslims. History attests. Anybody who's older than 75 will remember how we lived together in harmony. So it has nothing to do with the distinctly different religions that we practice together. We live together and practice a different religion. The issue is an introduction of a political movement that came from Europe on the heads and shoulders of the majority Muslims. The second community was Christians, and the third was Jewish, which was God-fearing community. And all three of them did not want this new type of Judaism that's going to rule, called Zionism. The
so where do you see it going then? What should be the answer or the outcome of this conflict in Gaza? Let's
so I'm saying
forward.
First, anybody in order to come to a solution, the world first has to realize that they're futilely trying to come to a solution because they're trying to solve two religions that are fighting, which is not the question here. The issue is that the religions can get along together. Something came along. It's like you're putting a bandage on a hemorrhaging wound. They have to understand that Zionism is the problem. What is the solution? I mean, now that if you understand the sickness, anybody can come along and I think the most practical and logical thing is to remove this. Just like apartheid was removed, it wasn't a problem between blacks and whites. It was this concept that the blacks are second-class citizens, and that they have to be oppressed. The same thing here. If you remove this oppression of the Palestinians, you remove this selfish political game that they want to take over the land, then we can live together, Jews and Muslims. And we've had for his, what's the problem of coexisting? It's just the implementing of a forceful occupation of a movement that's calling themselves Jewish. Remove that, we can have a fine Judaism that we had for thousands of years, practicing our religions properly and living together with the Muslims who love us. We live together, they protected us. And we, in fact, as Jews, we have to show gratitude, good to us. It was the Muslim countries that gave us a home. And we have to show gratitude to that. That's part of the Nakba, the vilification of people who did good to us.
Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss, thank you so much for joining me. It was really good to hear from you. Thank you.
مش قادر يدخلني بقول له بس دخلني حالي بدي 6 دقايق مش قادر يدخلني ايه بقول لي لا روح من غير مش تدخل مع اني ست كبيره في ال70 شو بدي اعمل اسوي انا بدك تروحي بدي اصلي بس.
The cries of Palestinian children too young to understand war. Confused and in shock, they wait in Gaza's Al-Aqsa hospital. The little boy in blue pants describes seeing his neighbor's gruesome head injury, an image that will surely haunt him. Those who can't speak of the horrors they've witnessed aren't spared. This baby lost his limb, his life forever changed by Israel's war. The agony is unavoidable and is unfolding within Gaza's few functioning hospitals. The relief of having survived an airstrike mixed with the torment of more attacks. A woman hugs a child, holding it tight, protecting it as best she can. But even in hospitals, help is limited. Health officials say medical supplies allowed in during the ceasefire were nowhere near enough. In northern Gaza, an air raid on the Jabalia refugee camp causes more death and destruction. The area is one of the most densely populated and has been targeted repeatedly during the past 8 weeks. The relative peace of the ceasefire is a distant memory. Once again, Gaza is an active war zone. And once again, for Palestinians, nowhere feels safe.
There is nothing. There's no civil defense, there are no ambulances, there's no medical services.
Rescue crews say they no longer have working machinery to search for survivors under the rubble. People offer each other what little comfort they can.
People are just lying on the ground. There are body parts everywhere. There are dozens of victims.
There is growing fear that Israel is expanding its assault, bombing southern Gaza, areas it previously described as safe. Living in terror, Palestinians brace for more attacks and cling to the hope another ceasefire will take hold. Katia Lopez-Odoyan, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
Already under relentless Israeli bombardment for months, Palestinians in northern Gaza are also going hungry. The UN Food Agency has halted aid deliveries, saying civil order has collapsed. So, how can Israel be stopped from using starvation as a weapon of war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoum. The World Food Program is suspending aid deliveries to northern Gaza because it's too dangerous. The UN agency says the decision wasn't taken lightly and it knows more people risk dying of hunger. But it's adamant conditions need to improve and the safety of its trucks and staff have to be guaranteed. The move leaves hundreds of thousands of Palestinians facing possible famine. Just how bad is the situation in the north of the Strip? And is Israel's offensive a war of starvation? This is what we'll be discussing today. But first, this report from Dmitry Medvedenko.
At the beginning of its war on Gaza, Israel cut off supplies of everything Palestinians needed to survive, closing its 2 border crossings and bombing Rafah, the crossing linking Egypt to the Strip.
We are imposing a complete siege on Gaza. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals, and we are acting accordingly.
Before October the 7th, 500 trucks would enter Gaza daily. Most of the population depended on humanitarian assistance. After a week of relentless bombing, the Israeli army issued an evacuation order for northern Gaza. 1.1 million people had 24 hours to move to the south of the Strip for their own safety, it said. Many left, but others didn't. In the months that followed, even those so-called safe zones came under attack, and some families made the difficult decision to return home or to what was left of it. It was weeks into its assault before Israel allowed the first trucks back in, and far below pre-war numbers. The UN has repeatedly accused Israel of blocking almost all aid deliveries to the north. This year, it says only 10 of more than 60 planned convoys have reached northern Gaza. This is a rare day when one made it through. Desperate for anything to eat, people rush in.
Why does a kilogram of rice cost $19? There's no flour. We're eating animal feed to stop ourselves from feeling hungry.
People who used to have money at the beginning of the war no longer have any. How can people eat or drink? This is a war of starvation.
In January, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of humanitarian assistance in Gaza. But Palestinians in the north say nothing has changed. Hunger, disease, displacement, and non-stop Israeli attacks. Dmitry Medvedenko, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
So what's the significance of the WFP's decision? And it's a good question for our guests today. Joining us from occupied East Jerusalem is Shana Lowe, communications advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council in Palestine. In Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, is Nabal Farsakh, spokesperson for the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, which has delivered essential services to Palestinians since 1969. And from London, we're joined by Sara Pantuliano, the chief executive of ODI, a respected humanitarian policy think tank. A warm welcome to you all, and thanks so much for joining us today on Inside Story. Nabal, let me start with you today. More than 1 million people used to live in the north of the Gaza Strip. Now, the area is mostly destroyed. For those who chose to stay, or for those who chose to return, just how difficult has life become for them? How desperate is the situation, and how dire is the suffering?
It is extremely dire. We're talking about almost 700,000 Palestinians who are now in Gaza City and the north. Those people are completely denied access to humanitarian aid. We're talking about WFP ceasing operation and distributing aid in Gaza City. But we all know that since the beginning of the war in Gaza, Israel has imposed siege on Gaza City and the north. And this area is nearly completely cut off humanitarian aid. That's why the situation there is catastrophic. People are literally starving. Most people, they struggle even to have one meal. Most essential supplies are not available at the market. And even items which are available are extremely high. We're talking about 10, 20 times higher prices than normal. Just having a one egg is almost $2. I have here closely from our colleagues in Jabalia, north of Gaza, and they have been telling me how they struggle every day in order to find food for their families.
Shayna, you heard Nabal there talk about how the situation is catastrophic. Now, the WFP previously warned of famine-like conditions affecting 2.3 million people in Gaza. They said that its teams witnessed unprecedented levels of desperation in the north just recently. Now, how bad, from what you're hearing, is the situation, and how fearful are you and your teams of how much worse it could get?
You know, we're hearing similar reports about the cost of food just simply being astronomical, if it even can be found. We have some colleagues who also remain in northern Gaza and Gaza City, and they have run out of flour, they've run out of corn, they're running out of animal fodder, they don't have any cooking oil. Really, they are struggling to survive. We've seen that the WFP reported that around 16% of children under the age of 2 are suffering from acute malnutrition in northern Gaza. This is only going to rise as aid convoys cannot access Gaza because it simply isn't safe. These are unbelievable conditions for humanitarians to be trying to work in. And imagine if it's this difficult for humanitarians, how difficult it is also for the civilian population that's struggling to survive.
Yeah, and Shayna, you were talking there about logistics, and I wanted to follow up with you about that because there are so many aid agencies who have complained about the cumbersome Israeli procedures that slow these aid trucks from getting into Gaza, that slow the flow of aid from getting into Gaza. I want to ask you about specifically how difficult it is getting the aid in. Not just that, but also once the aid is actually in, and it's not a huge amount that's getting in, but once it actually is in, how difficult it is for those aid agencies to actually pick up the aid and then distribute the aid.
Well, first of all, Israel has implemented these extremely cumbersome screening processes which delay aid. It's been difficult to track aid when it's coming in, be able to anticipate it. We've also seen recently that Israel has been targeting aid convoys, or the police officers, rather, who are accompanying aid convoys, which has led to the police no longer being willing to provide that service, meaning that convoys are being mobbed by desperate Palestinians struggling to get anything. So when trucks are managing to get into Gaza, having them travel from Rafah all the way in the south up to northern Gaza, it's very, very difficult for convoys to be able to make that journey and arrive to their destination with the aid with the complete package of aid, because so much of it is being looted along the way or being forced to be distributed to people who are in desperate need and struggling themselves. We desperately need, in addition to the massive scaling up of aid, the reduction of these cumbersome screening processes. We need additional access points, including from the north, from Erez, from the Karni crossing. We need additional ways to be getting aid in so that it reaches people more efficiently and can reach those throughout all of Gaza, all of whom are in desperate need, but particularly those in northern Gaza.
Sarah, so the World Food Program is now saying that it's halting food deliveries to northern Gaza because conditions are too dangerous. Obviously, this is of huge significance when it comes to the impact it will have on people in northern Gaza getting that hugely needed aid. I mean, the WFP is essentially the backbone for food delivery in Gaza. So if they are pausing their distribution, what does this mean going forward? And can we expect to see other aid agencies essentially taking the same decision in the near term?
Yeah, that is a very real, danger that all humanitarian supplies to northern Gaza will stop. And this is in the context of a situation that, as my colleagues were just describing, is desperate. We are seeing, suffering that is unspeakable throughout Gaza, but particularly in the north, where people have really been left without, support. I have very dear friends and colleagues who are, responding in these emergencies, people that have worked in some of the worst crises around the world, from Sudan to Yemen. And they're telling me that what they're seeing now, what they are witnessing, is something they've never witnessed in their very long careers as humanitarian actors around the world. Just to add a few figures to what my colleagues have already said, WFP talks about, potential famine, but we know that 500,000 Gazans are already in famine-like situation. And that, means that a lot of kids are starving because a lot of the population of Gaza is made of young people, is made of children. We are seeing, blockages of convoys repeatedly. I mean, the UN said that from the 1st of January to the mid of February, 51% of planned aid deliveries to northern Gaza were denied access by Israeli authorities. And, in the month of January, only 10 of the 61 humanitarian aid missions that they had asked for were allowed by Israel north of Wadi Gaza. And I think that is really important to stress, because Israel as a warring party has an obligation to facilitate humanitarian assistance, to allow humanitarian.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर